On the modern battlefield, firepower means nothing without logistics. Supplies and personnel must get from point A to point B, and point B could be anywhere in the world. Since Vietnam, it has been the C-130 cargo plane that drops onto jungle landing strips and dirt roads, delivering the goods. When the military moves, it moves inside the C-130 Hercules.
I mean, the C-130 can land on 3,000 foot of dirt and/or concrete and/or whatever happens to be out there. And in the Gulf War, I mean, basically they sectioned off just parts of highways and could land. It can go to very narrow places. It can go to very short places. It can go to these kinds of sites where they have just extremely difficult conditions and operate perfectly.
Among the sleek war machines of the modern Air Force, the Hercules may seem like a snub-nosed dinosaur. Some people dismiss it as a flying truck. Its crew is mere delivery men. Those people have never been to Alaska. This is the last frontier, where untamed wilderness becomes frozen moonscape. America's early warning radar sites are scattered across this barren terrain, and C-130s are their lifeline. Call it very special delivery. Runways are carved into mountains. Arctic winds play hell with landings. There is often one way in, one way out, and no second chances.
As a matter of fact, the conditions are so challenging that after guys have flown 25 missions into those sites, they actually get a medal because of the extra risk that's associated with flying into and out of those places.
A successful go-around is improbable.
Elmendorf Air Force Base, Anchorage, Alaska. It's February, and most people would say it's cold. But the single-digit temperatures are downright balmy compared to Alaska's bush country. That's where Colonel Ted Manolis and his crew are heading today.
He is hauling cargo out to Galena and then to Cape Newenham. Weather at both places is pretty decent, 12,000-foot ceilings or scattered skies at both places. It's cold up at Galena. Minimums of minus 30 Charlie. The max is about a minus 19.
Bitter conditions are a given, but it's not just the cold that causes problems. An Alaskan forecast is always followed by question marks, and a flight briefing at Firebird Ops is often a weather briefing, followed by another weather briefing.
Going out to Newenham, this low is going to bring some onshore flow, bringing in the stratus and fog. Our forecast, not really looking for it to come in until later on this evening, but there's a good chance once you get out there.
Weather is an obsession in the 517th Airlift Squadron.
Cape Newenham is our critical destination. It's 500 foot, or they have a chance of a 500-foot ceiling or 400-foot ceiling and visibility below 2 miles. For that approach that we're flying, we have to have a visibility of 3 miles to get in there.
Cloud cover, wind speed, visibility. The Air Force has strict rules about attempting a landing at a radar site, and with good reason. They are no place to crash or break down. A rescue would be difficult or impossible.
High terrain within 25 nautical miles is a 2,305-foot peak located 1 nautical mile east of the airfield.
You can't really tell the mountains right there because the clouds are covering them up. But behind those clouds are 2,000-foot cliffs and peaks.
If you get some turbulence as you go over this, it's probably short.
And these are called one-way sites.
Cape Newenham is what's called a one-way site. The jagged coastal mountains offer but one narrow approach to the runway. It's a tricky landing. But the skeleton crew there needs supplies. Though he knows the C-130 is tough as a tank, Colonel Manolis is taking no chances.
Yeah, usually, once they get de-iced, I like to come around and just take one more look around and make sure nothing's hanging off.
The radar site is the second and last stop on today's route. First, the crew will head up to the airfield at Galena to offload some supplies. Galena is the closest thing these pilots get to a milk run, a wide-open approach to a well-maintained landing strip.
Clear for takeoff. Looking for 112. Coming in. 5.
Then again, this is Alaska.
And power's good. Hold on 1. Come back, go back on 1. Go back on 2. And watch number 3. It's good. 3 and 4 backs on 2. Power's good. Okay, crew ready. Here we go. 155. Pilot's control. Pilot controls. Go.
And these guys know better than to take anything for granted.
You know, you can go into these sites, 50 times, and each time you go into it, it's going to be different just because of the weather conditions, the wind condition, the condition of the airplane, the crew you're going in with, and it's just a neat experience. And living up here in Alaska is just fantastic with all the things that the state has to offer.
Yeah, flying is definitely more challenging just because of the weather and the variety in terrain. When you have 20,000-foot mountains out there, that's a big difference from Abilene, Texas. When we go through school, we have a drop of airplanes that comes down. For our 17 people, we had one slot to Elmendorf, and it was our first choice assignment. So, yeah, we definitely asked to come up here.
I love the flying. It's challenging. It's something different every day. The weather is the most changeable I've ever seen anywhere in the world.
Broken ceiling on the deck due to fog with 3/4 of a mile in freezing fog. Winds are 100 at 3, temperature -30, and altimeter 2936. The forecast out there calls for that to be predominant until 20 Zulu with tempo conditions up to 200 and a mile and a half.
The crew is about to find out just how changeable the weather really is. The supposed milk run to Galena has suddenly become more complicated.
The original forecast for
Anchorage
Galena was pretty good. It was supposed to be clear and basically no wind, and we just got the current observation. They said it was 3/4 of a mile visibility due to ground fog.
Frigid temperatures have whipped up a layer of fog directly over the runway.
Oh boy.
Yep, this fog is a little foggy here. Okay, 2,000 feet. Looks like you're pretty close to being right on.
Okay, yeah, going to 1,700.
Roger.
Closing on Galena, the crew engages the runway lights, hoping to see the landing strip before they hit it.
Going to 790, you're looking for the runway through this cloud deck.
Roger. Okay, I've got him as well. Okay, 100 above. Minimums. Runway's in sight. 12 o'clock.
500%.
Flaps tracking.
Minimum.
137,
Minimum.
127, 110.
Okay, 37.
Sink rate, sink rate, glide slope, glide slope, glide slope, glide slope, glide slope, glide slope, 50, glide slope, glide slope.
good.
Compaccio.
The unexpected is expected in the bush country, but no pilot likes the runway to be a surprise.
That cloud deck, I mean, it's just, you know, a real thin layer right above us here. If we hadn't turned on the lights, I don't know if we would. I don't know if we would have seen it.
I don't think we would have.
The plane is safely parked, and the loadmasters take over. It's tough, physical work, and the bone-freezing cold at Galena makes it even tougher.
About the biggest problem we may have would be dealing with the weather.
Definitely the weather when we're loading the aircraft, the ice and snow, making sure that we don't slide or cause any problems, any damage to the aircraft, moving all the heavy equipment that close.
Supply pallets are quickly offloaded, and the C-130 is once again airborne, headed for the southwest coast. Alaska's unpredictable weather is again causing problems.
Yes, sir. The current conditions are reporting 3,000 scattered, estimated 4,500 broken, 30 miles visibility. Temperature is 29, dew point 20. Winds are estimated 130 magnetic at 17 with gusts to 25.
Strong winds have kicked up at Cape Newenham, and a landing could be treacherous.
Those winds have pretty much been constant the last couple hours, haven't they?
Yes, they are pretty much out of the south straight down the runway, but they have, the gusts have been right around 24, 25 with a base wind at 17, 18.
Okay, well, we've got a little extra gas. We'll plan on coming down, shooting the approach, and take a look at it, and maybe we've got a little time to wait around, so we'll see if the winds will be dying down any.
This morning's optimistic forecast seems like a distant memory. Weather is a minute-by-minute phenomenon out here at the edge of civilization.
And we planned on flying the instrument approach anyway, coming on down, and maybe at least getting some pictures of the site. But as we were going outbound, they reported fog coming in from the south end of the field. And the fog basically has obscured the whole field, knocked the visibility down to about a half a mile.
Ice fog. The crew calls the radar site to check and recheck conditions, but getting in seems unlikely.
Well, it looks like that latest update we had was 100-foot ceiling, a quarter-mile visibility. Winds were 23 gusted to 30 knots plus. So I think we're going to call it quits here and save the government some fuel and head back to Elmendorf.
The crew will end the day with a 1-1 record against Alaskan fog.
Cape Newenham radio, Totem 70.
Totem 70, Cape Newenham.
Yeah, roger, sir. Just letting you know we're going to head back to Elmendorf. You can give them a call, let them know we didn't make it in.
Yes, sir, I understand that. I'll pass it along to our center. Thanks for coming out. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Yeah, we hope so too. Thanks.
Every mission is a roll of the dice. Today they came up short, but another crew may make it the next time, or the time after that. Everyone in the squadron knows frustration is part of the mission. But that doesn't mean they like it.
Well, we're out here to do a mission, take some food, down into here and pick up things. Our job is to move things around. We just hate to get up and burn holes in the sky. We realize somebody does have to pay for this fuel. You hate to just not get anything done from it.
It's back to Anchorage, where there's always another C-130 being prepped for flight. There's always another destination tomorrow.
$50.
Choke. Controls out. Yeah, you're good to go. Pause airplane. Good job. Okay, let's see. Going to hard stand 14 crew. Okay, flaps up. Flaps track.
The 517th Airlift Squadron has a peacetime mission, supplying sites across Alaska. It also has an enemy to fight every single day: brutal weather. On this frigid winter day, the enemy is hidden.
Current satellite is down. They're having a little bit of feed problems, so I don't have a current satellite imagery. However, on the models, Prince William Low is what's giving us the snow right now.
Based on the limited data available to forecasters, Captains Tex Hennigan and Rob Hedden are going to make a run for Indian Mountain today. This will be a check flight, certifying Hedden to command future missions. The landing strip there is among the toughest a C-130 pilot will ever have to face, and Hedden is attempting it for the first time. But the site will not be a mystery to him. While no one knows what the weather will look like when they get there, the runway always looks the same: difficult. That's why the video briefings are critical.
It gives you a picture in your mind of what you can expect to see when you finally do break out of the weather, if you have to shoot an approach to get in there, versus, you know, you shoot the approach and you pop out and you're like, holy cow, I'm really steep.
Indian Mountain and the other one-way sites leave little room for error. Most are built into mountainous terrain. Their sloped runways can confuse pilots.
It's the trickiest part for the landing. And it does play into the approach because it produces an illusion of being steep. But the trickiest part is the part you don't have every time, and that's if something goes wrong past the point that you're committed. Now you got all kinds of tricky parts going on, which, thank God, that doesn't happen all the time. But if it does, it's going to be a rather busy flight deck.
Not that it isn't busy when everything is going well. Each member of a C-130's 5-man crew is vital to a successful mission.
So everybody's got to do their small part, and the sites require a little bit more crew coordination because, example being, aircraft commander is responsible for identifying to the rest of the crew when they are inside of that commit point. Because what you don't want is for somebody to think that they're outside of it, to call a go round. The aircraft commander forgets that he's inside of it and starts a go around, realizes, oh goodness, we can't make it.
The fact that this almost never happens is a testament to the skill of these crews and the reliability of the aircraft they fly. This type of flying has a long tradition in the squadron that stretches back to World War II, when the 517th was simply the 17th. Among its other critical roles in the war, the 17th Troop Carrier Squadron flew the deadly supply route known as the Hump. C-47 Goonie birds took off from India and zigzagged through the Himalayas, moving toward the Chinese interior where the Japanese had trapped nationalist troops. Although the squadron was deactivated after the war, it was later reactivated and found its true calling with the advent of the C-130. Starting in 1960, the 17th flew resupply missions to radar sites on the Greenland ice cap. The C-130s were equipped with skis and rockets back then, earning the squadron a new nickname, the Firebirds. The 17th soon moved to Elmendorf, where its specialized skills were put to use in the remote reaches of Alaska. That job continues today, with a new name and new C-130s.
Well, it's a very important mission. Obviously, we end up being the lifeline to the people out at those particular sites. All of the various different supplies that they need in terms of sustenance for their food supplies and so forth, we carry back and forth.
Yeah, we are clear for takeoff.
Hours coming in. 5,000. 10. About 15. Yeah, bike to number 2. Number 2's good. 1's good. 3's good, and 4's good, and power checks on all 4. Roger, 970. All right. This brakes. Look for 107. Roger that.
There are a small number of pilots good enough to land a C-130 on these sites. but even the best must get checked out with a seasoned pro.
All right, pilot controls. Pilot controls.
Today, it will be Tex Hennigan looking over Rob Hedden's shoulder as he takes the plane into Indian Mountain.
Go. Clouds, gear up. And gear up. I think we all like a challenge, and you know, it's an airland mission, but it is definitely a challenging one because they are unusual runways, and there are a lot of factors there involved that makes them a challenge.
Throw in the weather and you know, snow and ice, all that kind of stuff that you're going to have on runways out here. It can turn into quite a challenge. So I think just by our personalities, most pilots kind of like a challenge. Not too much of one, but at least some sort of a challenge.
Lieutenant Colonel Doug Happ is navigator on the mission, backing up the pilots on radar and reading the terrain. But ultimately, it all comes down to stick and rudder flying.
I trust my pilots. They always do a good job. There's never been any glitches. Nobody's ever said oops or oop, you know, wait a minute. That just doesn't happen up here.
The mission's first stop is Fort Yukon, a few miles north of the Arctic Circle. The weather there looks good, but there's trouble ahead.
Forecast for Indian Mountain for arrival time of 2130 Zulu is as follows. Broken at 1,100. Visibility 7 statute miles. Winds calm. Temperature -17 Charlie. Altimeter 2944. Current runway condition is packed snow on runway with no accelerometer reading.
Low cloud ceiling. Once again, the weather is marginal at the target destination. But the landing at Fort Yukon will give the crew time to recheck the forecast from the ground. Hopefully, conditions will change for the better.
Pretty much on center line.
Sink rate 50. Sink rate.
Everything's
Sink
fine.
rate.
Speed's good? Speed's good. Cut back.
Kapacho. See that front end loader down there? It's turning around. That's where we're parking, I think.
As the loadmaster pulls supply pallets off the C-130, Tex Hennigan rushes to Fort Yukon's Advanced Communications Center.
I also wanted to check, while I got you on the line, an update on the forecast weather for Indian Mountain at 2130 Zulu. Okay. What he had was an area forecast, and they're calling for 7,000 scattered, 12,000 scattered, so the area is looking good. Now I'm going to call the site and see what their current conditions are. Okay. My gut right now says that it will probably break on out as the morning goes on. But like we talked about in the weather shop this morning, it could do exactly the opposite. It could sock in. Based on the general weather patterns that they were talking about this morning, and based on what we're seeing right now out just in the general area that direction, because we could look that direction on the way in, I kind of think it'll clear up. But the other thing is, if it's forecast to be below mins, then technically I can't go there. So it's almost like a gamble, a lottery shoot or whatever, is how the weather's going to react. We don't have a lot of places we can divert to if the weather goes bad and we're airborne. So we have to keep a close eye on our fuel and a close eye on what's going on with the weather.
If nothing else, This mission will give the crew a chance to practice an assault takeoff. The runway at Fort Yukon is a comfortable distance, but they'll only use a small part of it today.
This will be an abrupt liftoff there, guys, so just be ready for that. We got the bunk cleared, all this kind of stuff. If we have to reject on the runway, it'll probably be pretty heavy braking, so be ready for that as well, okay? And power's coming in.
There's 5,000.
And you've got the radio now there, pilot.
10. Up on 15, looks like 2's your leader.
Roger.
Let's crossover, 17 on 2. 2's good. 1's good.
1's coming back over. Brakes released. Tag, please. Okay. Fuel wasn't going to hold for too much longer. Finish setting that for me, pilot, please.
Power looks good on 4 and 3. Power's good set.
Thank you.
Just before the wheels give out on the icy runway, the brakes are released.
Time. Controls? Yes, I have the controls, thank you.
Go. Rotate.
And the C-130 rockets into the air.
My wing landing, gear up.
Gear up.
The clock is ticking on a possible landing at Indian Mountain. As fuel burns down, the weather almost taunts them, keeping the runway just out of reach.
Okay, what we're doing is we're pretty much headed home, but what we're going to do is airborne, we're going to go and update the weather again to see if it is maybe breaking up and clearing out, which they're not expecting it to, but just to give it one last check. If it's good, then we'll go ahead and divert on into Indian Mountain instead of heading home.
The cargo plane does a wide circle over the site. The area surrounding it is clear, but a stationary cloud layer hangs just above the runway. Just like at Galena, the fog seems to consciously sit in the worst possible place. Unlike Galena, there's no room for an aborted landing, and the cloud ceiling is 500 feet too low to make the approach.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to make this our last holding turn. We'll check the weather again on the way inbound.
It seems like a lost cause, even though part of the site is visible.
There's the dome on top of the hill. Radar site.
Hennigan makes the last call to the site, but he can read the situation clearly from thousands of feet in the air.
Currently, I have temperature of 2, visibility 10, sky conditions 1,900 overcast, wind 140 at 03.
All right, 758 copies all. Looks like we're not going to make it in there today, so we're going to go ahead and head back to Elmendorf.
Roger, sir. We understand. Do appreciate your efforts, and I'll give Command Center a call if you'd like me to.
That would be much appreciated. Thank you very much.
All right, sir. Thank you, and y'all have a good flight.
The C-130 leaves the desolate reaches of Indian Mountain behind and heads for the cluttered skies over Anchorage. The 517th has lost another battle with the weather.
And we're cleared to land.
Minimum.
Flaps, pressure's all checked good. Brightest center alignment correction. Slowing the threshold.
They'll go back to Indian Mountain tomorrow, unless Alaska finds a way to stop them. This bitter cold February has been a disappointment for the 517th Airlift Squadron. In the past week, the weather has kept them from resupplying radar sites in remote parts of the state. Once again, the early forecast looks good, but things can change rapidly in the harsh Alaskan winter.
They're At times can be some frustration. Most of them know that with experience, it's not an exact science, and it's usually well, we'll go give it a shot. We have something to start with, and I'd say we're accurate a pretty good percentage of the time. Alaska is a very frustrating place.
Frustrating for the forecasters, frustrating for the pilots, and frustrating for the teams at the radar stations who depend on the C-130s for just about everything.
Ready to try it again?
Oh, once again, of course.
You're going up to Lisburn first today. Just kind of pinching the wind between the high coming in and out of Russia.
The base at Indian Mountain was beyond the squadron's reach yesterday. Now Captain Pete Lawhead is betting he can get in. But first, he'll have to get past Cape Lisburn. There's another radar station there on the coast of the Arctic Ocean, along with ice, barren cliffs, and the occasional polar bear.
Basically, it sits right along the coastline. There's a hill that comes down right at the approach end of the runway we'll be landing on. If you're looking out the right side, you'll probably be very uncomfortable. If you're looking out the left side, all you'll see is water.
What's on the right side?
Oh, about, how high is that hill? 1,500-foot hill, something like that the radar dome sits on.
It's a large cliff on final.
Yeah.
How close?
Oh.
Close.
Close. You don't fly straight into it, put it that way. It's an angling final all the way in.
It's the first step in a 2-for-1 training mission. The plan is for Captain Jeff Ehring to bring the C-130 into Cape Lisburn, then let Rob Hedden take over at Indian Mountain. Alaska veteran Pete Lawhead will back them up.
Right now, the way the weather's looking, Lisburn will be no problem at all getting in. Depending on how close the forecast is, getting up into Indian Mountain, 50-50. Depends on when we get there.
Climbs, flank gear up. 2 climbs, 4 good engines, gears coming up. The challenges going to Cape Lisburn, land at runway 8, are there's the hills that come straight down at the base of the runway. Biggest challenge is keeping an eye on the winds and making sure you're doing a good angling final and yet getting over to the runway when you need to be to the runway.
You've never seen anything like it. I mean, you're heading right towards the cliffs there, and it's kind of an eerie feeling until you turn on final.
As they approach Lisburn, the weather looks promising. But Indian Mountain is still hours away, and things change fast.
The weather's pretty good. It's not as big of a deal, but when the weather's marginal, it's kind of nice to know what you're getting yourself into. The earlier you can get a good update, obviously the better you are.
Totem 70, Cape Lisburn.
Yes, sir. Totem 70 is inbound your station in approximately 20 minutes, looking for current weather and upload information. We've got 1 pallet for you at 1,500 pounds.
Stand by, Totem 70.
70, stand by.
With the weather clear, the first landing is a go. Captain Ehring takes the yoke and turns the big plane toward the cliffs of Cape Lisburn.
About 2.5 miles from the cliffs. Thanks. Okay, picking up all the buildings.
Roger, I got the buildings.
This side of them. Okay. And with the ice pack, like I said, it's really hard to pick up.
About 10 slope. Roger. So let's go full flaps.
See where that little ridge line is?
Roger.
At the bottom. Your end of the runway is going to be right at the end of that. You can start to pick up the orange panels.
Watch your airspeed. Roger. About 1.5 miles.
Communication is critical when approaching a site. Every member of the crew backs up the pilot. It's essential for a safe landing.
1 mile from the terrain.
So I said, you aim out here a little bit further right, makes it a little bit more comfortable rather than having to drop that wing up right at the end.
Gotcha, okay.
Speed is 2515, 106. And Lisburn Totem 70 is base gear. Starting out a little bit steep.
Roger, Totem 70.
You're well clear on the right. Okay.
500.
This is
where you just want to keep driving it down, working on a nice smooth off to the right. You're still well clear right. Okay.
300.
Get 40 down to airspeed. 075 at 20, down to 5 at 20, still clear right. Working it right. Working it right. Still lined up.
50.
Low power. There you go.
The potentially dangerous landing goes smoothly, and representatives of Cape Lisburne, population 4, greet the crew. New faces are a novelty for the radar site caretakers. They stay in snowbound isolation for weeks at a time.
So what do you like about it up here?
Well, I don't know. I just always wanted to live in the north. I'd rather be in the interior, though. Yeah. I like trees.
There are no trees here. Just wind and remorseless cold. It's hard to imagine a less hospitable place on Earth. Exposed skin freezes in a heartbeat. Breath crystallizes as it leaves your mouth. Even hot coffee turns to ice.
Usually works a lot better if it's about 10 degrees, it's about 30, 35 below. You get that next 10 degrees and it just goes poof.
There's a job to be done here. Pallets to move and procedures to follow. But it's quick work, and then back inside the warm plane. The C-130 has barely landed before the crew is in the cockpit, prepping the plane for flight.
All right, clear number 3 engine. Number 3 cleared. 3 is really going to be turning now. Turn. Not turn up here yet. Stop. Rotation. Okie dokie. Now let the fun begin.
Or they would be prepping for flight, if they could get the engines to start.
Right now, pretty much not able to start number 3 engine. Looks like the starter control valve is not opening up, allowing bleed air to start turning the prop. Such fun.
What would that be due to?
Starter control valve failure. Yep.
Is that because of the cold or just possibly a mechanical failure?
Possibly it was its day. The wrong day. Roll the bones.
An engine that won't start means only one thing to flight engineer Mike Eaton.
I hate doing this. Oh well. Not going anywhere anyhow.
Eaton is hoping he can wrench open a faulty valve and get the engine running again. He's also wishing he didn't have to do it on top of a metal wing, with 20 knots of icy wind in his face. It's a quick fix, not an actual repair, and they'll know soon enough if he pulled it off.
Hey, Captain Ernst, how you doing? This is Captain Lawhead. I'm flying tail number 2070 out of Elmendorf. We're on a site trainer today, and we're up at Cape Lisburne, and we're broken. Just calling to let you guys know that.
The crew won't be going to Indian Mountain today. They won't be going anywhere.
Just talked back to home base, and they're putting together a maintenance package. They'll be taking off about 9 o'clock in the morning, coming up here. Should arrive here around 11 to 11:30. It'll probably take them anywhere from, I'm guessing, about 2 hours probably to be fixed.
Meanwhile, they'll be staying in their new home on the shore of the Arctic Ocean, waiting for the rescue plane. Their workday has ended. They just didn't expect it to end here.
So what do you guys do now?
Sit around, watch movies, read, just enjoy dinner. That's about it. It's part of life. Yeah, the sites are not a bad place to end up. You know, you're guaranteed a good bed and a nice warm home-cooked meal, so it's definitely livable.
Morning, on the top of the world. The stranded crew from the 517th is greeted by the familiar sight of a C-130 smoking across the sky. Their own C-130 sits broken, just off the gravel and ice landing strip at Cape Lisburne. Veteran pilots are used to seeing the runway's dangerous approach from inside a cockpit. Today, they watch from the ground, as the hulking cargo plane skirts the edge of a cliff. Colonel Ted Manolis performs a flawless landing, delivering a maintenance team with the parts and equipment needed to fix the broken engine. Based in Anchorage, these guys are used to the cold, but not this kind of cold. It's -30.
It really doesn't take any more time than normal since we're really season 2 working in these types of conditions. The main thing is when we're at a remote site like we are, we have to bring our own prop heat, which he's applying right now, and trying to get the heaters home all at one time.
Starting a cold engine can be destructive in and of itself. The heaters make sure the hydraulics work properly in flight, because leaking hydraulic fluid could make the original problem seem minor. And the problem today is one small part.
This here is your starter control valve. The problem we're having no engine rotation on start. And I troubleshot this down, but when you push the button in to start the motor, it would take 4 seconds for this to open up and give us rotation. So I'm changing it out.
While the maintainers labor over the engine, Colonel Manolis climbs onto the wing to start de-icing, the old-fashioned way. The cold seems to be the only obstacle to getting the plane off the ground. Then they try to start the engine.
Yeah, we just got off the phone talking with Firebird Ops, and we got basically a situation that we can take everybody back home, but we're gonna have to bring back one of these crew members, because what they're saying is that one of these whole crews, what they're saying is they cannot, on a C-12, take a full crew, Arctic bags, and pro gear back here, along with the maintainers and the part that's needed to fix the aircraft.
A snafu in maintenance at Elmendorf. The rescue plane brought the wrong part to Cape Lisburne. It doesn't matter how cold it is or how much ice is on the wings. The engine wouldn't work on the equator. All they can do now is decide who's flying back to Elmendorf and who's spending the night in the Arctic Circle.
Okay, Total 6-4, what we're thinking, and we'll basically send everybody except for the following crew members home on the 130, be Manolis, myself, Eaton, and we haven't pulled the navigators yet, but we'll use Ski for the loadmaster. How's that sound?
The 3 stranded pilots get to leave, but the rest of the crew will spend another night at the Hotel Lisburne. A smaller C-12 cargo plane will be back tomorrow with the needed part. That's Alaska. When you take off in the morning, you're never quite sure where you'll end up that afternoon. And for all the calculated risk in this job, it's better to be safe on the ground in Cape Lisburne than flying home without an engine.
Pilot's aircraft. Pilot's aircraft. Go. Time. Rotate. Link her up. Climb forward engine gears coming up. Tower's good, Roger. All right, where's that? Okay, thanks. Come back a little bit on 4. Okay, come left. Yeah, Cape Lisburne, Tunnel 6-4 is off. Thanks for your hospitality. Have a good evening. Yeah, it gets frustrating. You know, they send out a plane to get fixed and somehow forget to bring one of the parts you need to fix it. But those things happen, unfortunately.
Sometimes it's frustrating, but other times you break in places you want to be, so it can be a good benefit also.
Of course, that wasn't necessarily one of them.
Exactly.
It's not the ending they expected or wanted, but every mission holds a lesson for the next time they go up against Cape Lisburne, or Indian Mountain, or Cape Newenham.
I think the guys in this squadron are the best in the world. Primarily, all the different things that they're offered in terms of different types of challenges make them very, very qualified in what they do and pretty much the best at what they do. Now coming back and flying a much larger airplane, the C-130, into those locations, I can tell you that you didn't feel comfortable until you were on the deck and taxiing up and you're safe on the ground, because it provides a significant pucker factor. Same thing for the takeoff and departure out of there. Once you're airborne and clear of all the hills and so forth, then you kind of breathe a sigh of relief. So I braved death one more time and survived.
Thank you, Lord. One more time.